Cole Harrigan stepped off the transport ramp and into the scorching wind of outpost Kharos, the grit of the desert stinging his cheeks before he could take a proper breath. The rest of the recruits clustered ahead, a colorful mass of alien shapes bristling with glossy gear and wide, appraising eyes. Cole kept his pace steady. He had felt this kind of scrutiny on a dozen worlds, and the routine of it wrapped around him like an old, worn jacket. It never bothered him anymore. If anything, it sharpened his patience. He caught fragments of whispers drifting through the group. Humans clung to metal slugs, they said. Humans refused to evolve. Humans were quaint fossils holding on to relics of chemical combustion. Cole smirked, not out of pride, but at the consistency of it all. Every new species had the same assumptions, and every time he deployed with them, he waited for the inevitable moment those assumptions cracked. The outpost commander, a broad-shouldered Thraxian with 4 restless eyes, gestured for the recruits to gather in a semicircle near the firing dunes. The sand was pressed into ridges from years of drills, each one a silent ledger of past failures and triumphs. Cole found his place at the far end of the line, his gear compact, deliberately unremarkable. He preferred to be underestimated. It made the reveals easier. Commander Verzak introduced the training cycle, emphasizing unity among species and the necessity of mastering one another's tactical doctrines. His deep, resonant voice echoed across the dunes with a solemn authority. Then came the part Cole expected. Each recruit would present their primary weapon and demonstrate basic proficiency. The aliens shifted excitedly, their pride evident as they prepared to show the brilliance of their civilizations. One by one, they stepped forward. A Delvani scout activated a sleek plasma rifle that hummed like a distant storm. A crystalline Lorsch wielded a grav projector that rippled the air in shimmering waves. Each performance drew approving murmurs, and the recruits swelled with confidence. Cole watched them all carefully, noting their strengths, their mannerisms, their assumptions. Especially their assumptions. When his turn came, the murmuring quieted, replaced by the sort of hush that accompanied an anticipated disappointment. Cole knelt, unwrapped the cloth bundle strapped to his pack, and revealed a battered M250 colonial rifle. The weapon's steel glinted dully beneath the twin suns, its edges worn, its frame unmistakably ancient beside the elegant alien devices. Snickers rose rapidly, some clumsy, some artful, all expected. Cole ignored them. He settled the rifle's bipod into the sand and aligned his sights with a distant target node. The desert wind tugged at his sleeves as he exhaled and fired. The explosion of sound struck the recruits like a physical force, a visceral shock that silenced every laugh. The target evaporated into a spray of metal fragments. Smoke curled lazily from the barrel as Cole reset the weapon. The silence that followed was heavier than the shot itself. Yet the tension did not come from awe alone. It carried resentment, disbelief, even discomfort. One alien muttered that such brutality was inefficient. Another insisted it was barbaric. Cole simply locked the rifle and lifted it with a casual, practiced motion. "It's familiar," he said evenly. "Reliable, and good for making a point." Commander Verzak studied him with renewed interest. One eye fixed on the ruined target. The others watched too, unsettled but unable to look away. Cole sensed the shift, the first hairline fracture in their assumptions, and let a slow, knowing breath slip past his lips. The moment felt quietly significant. The Delvani scout was the first to step forward after Cole's demonstration, eager to reclaim the mood that his booming rifle shot had unsettled. He raised his plasma carbine and fired a sequence of elegant bursts, each one forming a tidy sphere of light that drifted toward its target before collapsing into a crisp detonation. The surrounding recruits murmured appreciatively. Cole watched, noting the weapon's precision, but also its delicacy, the way it hesitated before releasing its energy. It was effective, certainly, but temperamental. He doubted it would tolerate sand for long. A pair of Vargoth gunners followed, their grav-casters pulsing with a rhythmic thrum that lifted small dunes into swirling columns. They hit their targets with impressive force, flattening them under violent implosions. The spectacle drew enthusiastic applause, especially from species who favored showmanship in their martial traditions. Cole folded his arms and observed without judgment. Every military culture had its aesthetic. Humans just preferred theirs loud and decisive. When the demonstrations cycled back toward him, several aliens eyed his M250 with a blend of suspicion and disdain. A crystalline Lorsch leaned closer to a companion and whispered that humans must cherish the past to a fault. A broad-shelled Krell insisted that kinetic weapons were designed for intimidation, not effectiveness. Cole caught each remark, but let them pass. He had heard sharper versions delivered to his face by commanders, politicians, even enemies. Opinions didn't bother him. Incompetence did. Commander Verzak raised one of his 4 hands to restore order, his voice cutting through the chatter with an authoritative resonance. He reviewed the strengths of the group as a whole, but paused briefly when referencing Cole's rifle, seeming to choose his words with uncharacteristic care. He acknowledged the destructive impact, while questioning its practicality for prolonged engagements. The recruits nodded as though his doubts validated their own biases. Cole met the commander's gaze without flinching. He appreciated the honesty, even if it leaned towards skepticism. The M250 isn't meant to impress, he said. It's meant to work, even when everything else refuses to. The Thraxian's eyes flickered, perhaps in curiosity, perhaps in irritation. Before he could respond, a comms officer approached and murmured a short message. Verzak's expression hardened. He announced that a cluster of unidentified signatures had been detected skirting the outpost perimeter. It might be a false alarm, but protocol required a readiness drill. His tone suggested he expected them to fail, though he framed it as a valuable exercise. Recruits scrambled to gather their equipment, still buzzing with the thrill of their earlier displays. Cole remained calm, checking the chamber of his rifle and securing his pack. A Delvani, previously bold, hesitated near him and asked whether he planned to rely on that ancient device during the drill. Cole smiled faintly and assured him he had no intention of bringing it into a situation where its limitations might matter. The comment intrigued the nearby soldiers. For the first time, their disdain dimmed, replaced by a flicker of curiosity. If the M250 wasn't his real weapon, what was? Cole tightened a strap on his vest and nodded toward the supply depot. How about something more appropriate for field conditions, he said. Human standard issue. You'll understand when you see it. The ambiguity rippled through the group, unsettling yet alluring. Even Verzak appeared subtly intrigued, though he hid it behind stern professionalism. Cole welcomed the shift. Skepticism was fine. Anticipation was better. He approached a reinforced crate waiting beside the depot wall, brushed the sand from its surface, and keyed in his access code. The seals released with a pressurized sigh. The recruits leaned forward instinctively, compelled by equal parts doubt and growing fascination. Cole rested his hand on the lid and looked over his shoulder at them, the hint of a grin touching his features as the crate began to open. The crate opened with a slow hydraulic lift, releasing a faint metallic scent that mingled with the desert air. Inside lay the M250, its angular frame nestled in impact foam like a dormant predator. The weapon's matte black plating absorbed the sunlight instead of reflecting it, giving it an ominous, deliberate presence. A hush settled over the recruits as Cole lifted it free, the belt of tungsten-piercing rounds clinking softly against its side. The aliens stared as though he had revealed a relic from some forbidden archive. Cole felt the familiar weight settle into his arms, grounding him in a way no plasma coil ever could. Commander Verzak stepped closer, his lower pair of eyes narrowing as he inspected the rifle's intricate rails and reinforced barrel. Human craftsmanship? He asked, voice thick with suspicion. Cole nodded. Verzak traced a finger near the suppressor shroud, but stopped short of touching it, as though expecting it to burn. It looks unstable, he added. Cole chuckled, reminding him that aesthetics rarely determine performance. The exchange drew a few uneasy glances from the recruits, many of whom seemed torn between fascination and alarm. Before further discussion could unfold, the outpost alarms erupted. A sharp, oscillating wail streaked across the dunes, sending plumes of disturbed sand swirling upward. Sensors confirmed an approaching group of raiders, armored scavengers notorious for exploiting border worlds. Verzak barked orders, and the recruits scattered into defensive formations, suddenly aware that their drill had transformed into a live engagement. Cole watched the panic ripple through them, the sudden stiffening of limbs, the frantic fumbling for weapons. Their training had been polished but untested. The first wave of raiders emerged over the ridge, their armor plates shimmering with a reflective coating designed to disperse plasma. Alien rifles ignited in a flurry of glowing bolts, but many shots scattered harmlessly across the raider shields. Cole saw the shock ripple through the recruits as their prized weapons failed to penetrate. Even the grav-caster's implosive pulses diffused into harmless bursts of dust. The enemy advanced with unnerving confidence, closing the distance at a relentless pace. Cole sank to one knee and planted the M250's bipod into the sand with practiced precision. He fed the ammunition belt through the receiver, locked the housing shut, and braced the rifle stock against his shoulder. The air around him grew tense, as if the desert itself waited to see what humans would do next. He steadied his breathing, letting the chaos fade into a muted hum at the edge of his awareness. Then he squeezed the trigger. The M250 erupted with a deep, concussive roar that cut through the battlefield like rolling thunder. Each shot cracked the air with violent clarity, sending a rain of brass spilling into the sand. The rounds tore through raider armor as though it were brittle ceramic, punching clean holes that left the invaders staggering. Cole adjusted his aim fluidly, tracking movement with deliberate precision. Smoke curled from the suppressor as the rifle spat round after round, a relentless rhythm that pushed back the advancing line. Recruits who had been retreating moments earlier paused, stunned by the weapon's devastating impact. Verzak shouted for them to regroup behind Cole's position, and they obeyed, revitalized by the sudden shift in momentum. The battlefield now echoed with the mingled sounds of alien energy fire and the M250's brutal cadence. Cole felt the familiar clarity settle over him, the calm that accompanied purpose. As the raiders faltered under the onslaught, some attempted to retreat, dragging their wounded across the dunes. Cole lifted his finger from the trigger, allowing the weapon to cool. The air shimmered with heat and smoke, the scent of ozone and burnt metal thickening with each passing second. The recruits stared at the fallen raiders, then at Cole, their earlier mockery replaced by something quieter and far more complex. Commander Verzak stepped beside him, chest rising with heavy breaths, and surveyed the battlefield. His voice, when it finally emerged, carried none of its former skepticism. "Your weapon," he said slowly, "reshaped the outcome of this engagement." Cole met his gaze, knowing that the commander meant more than the words suggested. The battle had done more than reveal the M250's strength. It had exposed the fragility of their assumptions. Cole rose, dusting sand from his knee, and watched the recruits gather around the smoking rifle with reverent curiosity. Their expressions reflected a new understanding, one earned not through explanation but survival. And though the battle had ended, Cole sensed that the real work, bridging the gap between their philosophies, was only beginning. The heat had begun to fade by the time the recruits gathered again on the dunes, their armor dusted with the residue of battle and their expression subdued. The M250 lay on a flat stretch of sand where Cole had set it, its metal still warm from the engagement. No one approached it without purpose. Even those who had mocked him earlier now studied the weapon with an intensity that bordered on reverence, as if trying to reconcile its brutal efficiency with the assumptions they had embraced just hours before. Cole knelt beside the rifle and began the methodical process of cleaning it. He worked in silence, moving with practiced precision, allowing the steady rhythm of maintenance to calm the remnants of adrenaline still lingering in his bloodstream. The recruits lingered nearby, their murmurs soft, uncertain, contemplative. Their earlier bravado had evaporated, replaced instead by something that resembled humility. Cole didn't blame them for their previous arrogance. Every culture developed its own sense of superiority. The real test was whether they could adjust when it shattered. Verzak approached with a slower gait than usual, his shoulders settling into a more relaxed posture. His four eyes studied Cole not with suspicion, but with a sharp, thoughtful interest. The commander's armor bore new scorch marks, evidence that he hadn't stayed sheltered during the fighting. Cole respected that. Many officers liked to feel untouchable. Verzak preferred to stand where the danger was greatest. "You held the line when others faltered," Verzak said, stopping a few steps away. His tone carried neither flattery nor ceremony, only acknowledgement. "Your tactics were decisive, and your weapon's effectiveness was beyond what I expected." Cole set aside the brush he had been using and met the commander's gaze. "I didn't do anything extraordinary," he replied. "I used the tool built for the problem in front of us. Plasma scatter isn't designed for that kind of armor. Kinetics are." Several recruits exchanged glances, absorbing the explanation as though hearing an unfamiliar concept for the first time. Verzak folded his upper arms behind him and studied the rifle more intently. "Our doctrine has always emphasized refinement over force. Yet your method suggests that reliability may be a form of sophistication in itself." Cole nodded. "Humanity learned early that fighting isn't elegant. It's unpredictable, messy, and unforgiving. We build weapons that reflect that reality. We keep improving them, but we never forget the fundamentals." A Delvani scout stepped closer, her earlier aloofness replaced by genuine curiosity. "Would you teach us how to handle it?" she asked. Not necessarily the weapon itself, but the mindset behind it. The question rippled through the group, loosening whatever restraint had kept them silent. Others chimed in, cautiously at first, then with growing enthusiasm. They wanted to understand recoil control, target prioritization, field adaptability, concepts their own training rarely emphasized. Cole listened, surprised by the eagerness in their voices. It wasn't just interest, it was gratitude disguised as curiosity. Verzak raised a hand to quiet them, though even he struggled to conceal a faint glimmer of approval. "If you are willing," he said to Cole, "I would assign you as a tactical weapons advisor for this battalion. Your perspective could strengthen more than our armaments." Cole considered the offer only briefly. Despite his solitary nature, he appreciated competence wherever he found it. These recruits had potential, raw, undisciplined, overconfident, but willing to learn. That willingness mattered more than any advanced technology. "I'll take the position," he said, "on one condition." Verzak tilted his head. "Name it." "That we start by revisiting the assumptions everyone carried into today. Not just about humans. About combat. About adaptability. About what strength actually looks like." The commander evaluated the request, then inclined his head in firm agreement. The recruits nodded as well, some with embarrassment, others with determination. Cole resumed cleaning the M250, sensing the shift in the air, not triumph, but transformation. The battle had ended, but something larger had begun, a bridge between philosophies built from steel, grit, and the willingness to change. As the suns dipped lower and painted the dunes in deep gold, Cole tightened the last bolt on the rifle and set it upright beside him. The recruits watched him with quiet respect, no longer seeing a relic-clinging outsider, but a soldier who had earned their trust. Sometimes, Cole reflected, the galaxy needed a reminder that humanity's strength wasn't rooted in tradition or stubbornness. It was rooted in the relentless drive to endure, adapt, and overcome, no matter who doubted them.